Imagine waking up one morning to the sound of breaking news that could shake the foundations of your economy. The United States, under President Donald Trump, has just imposed a staggering 50% tariff on Indian exports. From textiles and gems to seafood and leather, nearly every sector that connects Indian workers to American consumers is suddenly under siege. For many, it felt like a declaration of economic war. But what happened next was even more remarkable. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, instead of bowing under pressure, rose with a response that blended defiance, strategy, and an unyielding message. India will not break. India will stand tall. This clash of two towering leaders, Trump with his transactional protectionism and Modi with his call for self-reliance, has become one of the most defining diplomatic confrontations of our time. The tariff shock and its fallout. The story begins with Trump's announcement of sweeping 50% tariffs, justified in part by India's continued purchase of Russian oil. For Washington, it was both a political message and an economic strike. But for India, it threatened millions of livelihoods. Exporters in Gujarat, artisans in Rajasthan, and small-scale textile workers across the country suddenly faced the terrifying reality of losing access to one of their largest foreign markets. Concerns spread quickly. Analysts warned that India's GDP growth could dip below 6%, a number that shook investor confidence. Families depending on remittances and trade worried about job losses, while industries already struggling with global slowdown saw this as a potential death blow. Yet the tariff shock was not just about economics. It was about prestige. India, a rising power on the global stage, was being publicly singled out and punished. Many within Modi's administration viewed it as an insult not only to the government, but to the dignity of the Indian nation itself. This perception shaped the tone of the response. Modi's strategic countermove. When Trump raised tariffs, Modi did not immediately rush to the phone. Reports surfaced that he ignored several calls from the White House. Instead, he chose to address his own people first. Standing at the Red Fort on Independence Day, he gave a speech that resonated with every Indian household. His message was simple but powerful: Swadeshi, or self-reliance. Modi urged citizens to buy Indian-made goods, to strengthen local industries, and to treat the tariffs not as punishment, but as an opportunity to build an independent future. This was more than rhetoric. It was the resurrection of an old nationalist ideal, one deeply connected to India's history of resisting colonial exploitation through self-reliant economies. Behind the scenes, his government moved quickly. Billions in tax cuts were announced to boost consumption and provide relief to middle-class families. GST reforms were pushed through, simplifying compliance for small businesses and exporters. These changes were meant to cushion the immediate blow of tariffs while laying the foundation for a stronger domestic economy. At the same time, India accelerated investments in manufacturing, technology, and rare earth industries, sectors where dependence on imports had left vulnerabilities. Modi framed it as part of his Atmanirbhar Bharat vision, a roadmap for India to thrive without leaning too heavily on foreign markets. Diplomacy and defiance. As Modi worked on strengthening the home front, he also played the diplomatic chessboard with remarkable calculation. By refusing Trump's calls, he sent a subtle but powerful message. India would not beg for relief. Instead, he began deepening ties with other powers. China, which itself had been targeted by Trump's trade wars, suddenly found common ground with India. At international forums, both nations highlighted the dangers of protectionism and positioned themselves as advocates for open, multipolar trade systems. Russia, meanwhile, became an even closer energy partner, as India defiantly refused to scale back its oil purchases despite U.S. objections. This maneuvering reflected Modi's broader strategy. While Trump relied on pressure and punishment to force compliance, Modi sought to expand India's options. By widening trade relationships with the Middle East, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, India began diversifying away from overdependence on the U.S. market. The tariffs, once seen as a disaster, were reframed as a catalyst for independence. Modi's narrative was clear. India would not be bullied, and instead of kneeling, it would rise stronger. Economic realities and the road ahead. Still, the economic pain was real. Indian exporters struggled, many facing closures or sharp reductions in orders. Yet government relief, combined with growing domestic demand, prevented total collapse. Key sectors like pharmaceuticals and electronics remained largely unaffected, allowing India to maintain some balance. More importantly, the reforms launched in response to the tariffs, such as simplified taxes and renewed manufacturing push, began to show signs of long-term promise. This episode also altered India's political landscape. Modi's call for Swadeshi resonated deeply with ordinary Indians, reminding them of Gandhi's independence-era boycotts. A clash beyond tariffs. At its core, the Modi-Trump tariff standoff was about more than trade. It symbolized a clash between two visions of leadership. Trump represented a hard-nosed, transactional, America-first approach that treated alliances as business deals. Modi, on the other hand, embodied strategic patience, national pride, and the promise of a multipolar world. Their confrontation revealed the cracks in U.S.-India relations, but also underscored the resilience of Indian democracy and economic ambition. For the global stage, it raised profound questions. Would India tilt closer to Russia and China, forming new power blocs? Would the United States lose one of its most important strategic partners in Asia? Or would both sides eventually return to the negotiating table, realizing that their fates were too intertwined to be pulled apart by tariffs? This showdown between Trump and Modi will be remembered as more than a trade dispute. It was a test of national will, leadership, and global positioning. Modi's response was not to retreat, but to fight on new fronts: economic reform, nationalist pride, and diversified diplomacy. India may have lost in the short term, but the long-term consequences could very well redefine its place in the world. So what do you think? Can Modi's strategy turn this crisis into an opportunity for India's economic independence? Or will Trump's tariffs leave lasting scars on one of the world's fastest-growing economies? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world.